Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dat podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Nenemetz, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the Growler Balls Don't Lie. Paul Dana Jr., Jay Morrison here with you. Happy New Year upcoming to everyone. We're here on New Year's Eve morn, if you will, recording. We have a full day ahead of us, but New Year is upon us, Jay.
Yeah, it is. It does not feel like New Year's Eve, nor will it feel like New Year's Eve, I think, at any point today. You mentioned it. We've got a full day ahead of us because of the Bengals playing on a Saturday. This is like our Wednesday. Heavy day at the stadium today. We didn't even bother to try to make plans tonight. Let's just come home from work and maybe watch a little football and toast a drink and say Happy New Year.
The only question is if you'll make it to midnight. That's my questions anymore these days. Things have changed. The life has changed. It's a sad, sad thing. It used to be really fun, and now it's just maybe I'll wake up at 11:58.
Set an alarm.
Yeah, I always try. That's probably the move we're going to have to make. Because we got a lot to get to. I never know what day it is anyway, much less what year it is now. We can add that one into the equation because they're playing on Saturdays. We have holidays in the middle. Games are on Wednesdays. It's just dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. But so right now we're working on getting towards the Saturday game against the Steelers, and so it's New Year's Eve. It's Tuesday, but it's a normal Wednesday, and we'll keep going through. So you'll get all of your normal content that you're used to. The rewatch reaction is up. Recorded that with Charlie Goldsmith yesterday, and really good stuff with him. We talked a little bit about some of the underappreciated moments from Burrow's gem, and kind of wondering how much progress we saw from the defense, and particularly some plays that made you wonder how close it was to the narrative being very, very different. But that said, go check that out. Really enjoying doing those with Charlie. One more left, breaking down the regular season with him. And I think we're going to keep doing that when we get into the offseason. As we get into some of the offseason topics, there's plenty of film dives to do there. So looking forward to doing that with Charlie. All right. Let's get into a little bit of news. Mo Egger is going to join us here in a little bit. We're going to talk about the MVP debate with him. We have, of course, Growler Bets to go over and some interesting results there. We'll have our ARBIES, and we're going to talk a little bit about this Sheldon Rankins situation as well. And we talked to Dan Pitcher and Lou Anarumo yesterday, so we'll have some thoughts on things that we heard from them. So, as we said, a lot in the show today. We're very, very full. A lot of sap. Okay. Before we get into that, I should remind everybody, BetMGM, Nation Kitchen and Bar, the home of all of our live events that we've been doing all year long. Awesome. If the Bengals get in the playoffs, we know the DVOA is at, what's it at, Jay? DVOA, giving some thought to the idea of the Chiefs resting the starters. It's in the formula, 4.6%. Okay. If that happens, we're going to be doing another show over there. We'll be heading down there to have a playoff preview show in some capacity. So it might not be done yet. It maybe not done yet. So we could go back there, and I would love to, because we've had such a great time down there. The events have been awesome. The support you guys have shown has been awesome, and it's a great venue. You can get plenty to drink, plenty to eat, good food, TVs everywhere, and you can always, any big event, go down there. Can't recommend it enough. Nation Kitchen, BetMGM at the banks. All right, 2025 opponents are finalized, Jay.
Yes, big moment.
Feel it, the excitement. Well, we knew all of this except for one. And so the final one was locked in last night with the San Francisco 49ers losing and locking up fourth place. You get the Arizona Cardinals officially added to the Bengals home slate as the like place finisher in the NFC West.
Yeah, I mean, had the Titans beaten the Jaguars on Sunday, we could have had Cali and the Titans coming to Cincinnati next year, but instead the Jaguars will be one of those other random unknowns that were just finalized. But the Arizona one's interesting because had that been San Francisco, I mean, it's already, as an interconference game, it's already kind of in that likely realm for an international game if the Bengals get one, which it feels like there's a pretty good chance they will. That would have been a really intriguing one. Bengals 49ers. I'm not sure that Bengals Cardinals is as sexy, but that is who it's going to be, is the Cardinals coming back here for the first time since 2019, if it is actually here.
Exactly. The chance of a international game, very good. Home games, not I'm taking the divisionals out of this. Home games will be Patriots, Jets, Jags, Bears, Lions, Cardinals. Away games on the great frozen tundra tour for us, Jay. Buffalo, Denver, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Miami.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miami. I love you, Miami. One time amongst the great Northern Tour, because you throw Pittsburgh and Cleveland in there, and that's a Rust Belt extravaganza.
Yeah.
But
Miami
okay.
will probably be week one. You won't even get to enjoy like a December trip to Miami like we did in 2019.
Oh, we need it. We need it. But anyway, that schedule officially finalized, and get ready to get your travel plans going and figure out which one it's going to be. I mean, Lambeau's the top of the list. And we did that back in whatever year that was, 17.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it's a special place. It's a fun trip. Highly recommend for anybody if you get a chance to go to Lambeau to do it. Let's reset the latest on the playoffs. I mentioned 4.6%. But since we talked, the Chiefs are not going to be playing their starters. Andy Reid has never done that in a game that matters or that doesn't matter where their seat is locked up. But I'm here to deliver hope.
Mm-hmm.
They have always tried to win and sometimes done so. They've had some success in these games where they've played backup quarterbacks, and Carson Wentz won a game last year, the last week of the season for the Rams against the 49ers when he was filling in. And Carson Wentz with a year underneath Andy Reid in the background is interesting as a quarterback, and maybe not an impossible task when you talk about that happening. Tua is still up in the air whether he's going to play for the Dolphins as they go to the Jets. No Tua potentially. Cold. We know how the Dolphins feel about the cold. It will be about freezing temps right around that 30 area in Newark on Sunday. So maybe Pittsburgh will be playing their starters. They will be going for it. They have something to play for. Having the 5th seed over the 6th seed is a major advantage this year. You'd much rather go to Houston than Baltimore in week 1, and they just need to get back on the winning track, and that's just kind of who Mike Tomlin is anyway. Jay, which of the 3 prongs concern you most at this point?
That's a good question. I mean, the easy answer is Miami and the Jets, but I mentioned this in our group chat. Miami's 1-9 in their last 10 when it's under 30 degrees, and the Jets, they look like they've quit. But the final game of the year, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to want to go out that way. He's auditioning for 2025. Someone's going to want him next. I think there's a lot of guys on that team that are auditioning for 2025. And I just think that if Miami jumps on them early, they roll over and quit 100%. But if they make it a game, if they take it into the second half and it's close, I could really see that upset happening. But I think the bigger concern is just Kansas City with resting the starters. And I do wonder, because you pointed this out, where they would go from Christmas Day to whatever that July or January 19th,
to Saturday or Sunday,
25 days without playing. Would they treat this like a preseason game where play the starters for a quarter, a half? And then the other thing at play here, even if they don't play the starters, Denver's still 1-17 against the Chiefs in the last 18. I mean, that's a whole different group of players playing in those games over the last 9 years. Kansas City just has their number. And you see this all the time, that the teams that have nothing to play for and play loose, the teams that have everything on the line and it gets tight. And I don't know. It's really hard to pick which one you feel most comfortable in happening. I mean, I would say Bengals beating Pittsburgh, just based on the way both teams are playing right now, would be the most likely result that the Bengal fans need.
Yeah, so it was just back in week 14 that the Jets played the Dolphins in Miami, and it was 32-26. I mean, it was a close game.
Yeah.
So you, it's not like that's out of the question. And last week they got boat raced by the Bills, but you know what? In Buffalo, a team that's when a team quits. It's not even the last week. You're in Buffalo, you're just not into it. They go up by a bunch. You're not going to win it. But they've been competitive. Like the Jets have been competitive. They've been finding ways to lose. It's been Bengali. I mean, they lost by 1 to the Colts. They lost by 5 to the Seahawks. They lost by 6 to the Dolphins. They beat the Jags. They were in it against the Rams just a couple of weeks ago. So it's not. I don't think it's impossible for the Jets to pull that off. They do have Aaron Rodgers. Okay, as bad as he was last week. But it's still, I still feels like the Chiefs playing their backup. It's also like, will they even keep Carson Wentz in? The Chiefs have no reason to want the Bengals in the playoffs, along with the rest of the league.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, when Andy Reid and his staff are sitting in their meetings this week and deciding how they want to approach this, someone's going to say it. Do we really want to win this? Do we really want to usher the Bengals into the equation, or would we rather bring in this team that we always beat when we play our guys as the option? I think that's the scariest part. And maybe they're like, look, that's not in our nature. We play to win. These guys need to go out there and play to win no matter what. Let's go beat them with our backups. Who cares, right? We're the Chiefs. And maybe that's the case. Or maybe they watch that Bengals team and be like, yeah, bring in the team that usually finds ways to lose or sloppy at the end of games, or even when they've won, it's been sloppy. Give us that defense. Maybe that's what they say. But I do think it's at some point that's part of the equation here for Kansas City, and it'll be fascinating to watch that window play out if indeed it even matters.
And the Chiefs could say, we do want the Bengals in, because that they would have a great shot of upsetting Buffalo and taking their perceived biggest rival in the AFC out in week 1, and then the Chiefs would get the Bengals on arrested. Now, I don't think anybody wants to play Burrow and the Bengals, but it's not like the Chiefs will be playing them in the first game. So maybe that kind of neutralizes that conversation a little bit, where maybe we do want them to get in there and go to Buffalo and give Buffalo a game.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all plays out, but that's the current setup of that. Jay, can I get a Ja'Marr Chase Triple Crown update? Where are we at on that?
So he still has the lead in everything. He has 1,612 yards. Justin Jefferson 1,479. So that's 133-yard lead in yardage. He has an 8 reception lead on Amon-Ra St. Brown and a 9 reception lead on Brock Bowers. So you figure if he gets his regular 5, he should be in good shape there. And receiving touchdowns, again, it's a pretty comfortable lead. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 12, and Scary Terry McLaurin from Washington has 12. Jamar is at 16, so that one feels pretty comfortable, a 4-touchdown lead. What I think is interesting is we've talked about this a lot, the Jamar Triple Crown. There's not an official Triple Crown for quarterbacks, but if there were, what would you say it was? Touchdown passes, passing yards, QBR? That fair?
Probably not. I wouldn't go QBR. But I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
I'm team adjusted net yards per attempt guy. And I got my arm up on that. That EPA are the 2 most correlative to winning. And so those would be 2 that I would look out. They tend to be very similar.
Yeah. Well, if you go, I mean, Burrow leads in passing touchdowns. He leads in passing yards. If you do go QBR, he's second only to Lamar. And Lamar's at 78, Burrow's at 76.7. I don't know if he could pass him, make up 1.3 in 1 week, but he's right there too at the top of a lot of those lists. I don't have the other stats you mentioned. Those are harder to look up.
Yeah,
you can look up in individuals, but it's hard to look up where everybody ranks in those.
Yeah, in adjusted net yards per attempt, Burrow he's in the top 5. He's right. But he's not at the top. PFF grade, you've got like Burrow and Lamar are neck and neck right at the top right now, depending on what you're looking at. But I mean, obviously the volume stats all favor Burrow just because they've put so much on his plate this year. Speaking of putting stuff on Burrow's plate, we chatted with Dan Pitcher. What was most notable to you from our conversation with Pitch yesterday?
Yeah, it kind of started with the confidence that they have or don't have in Khalil Herbert. If Chase Brown can't go on Sunday or on Saturday with this ankle injury, and when Dan was talking about Herbert, he said that he has hardly played since they traded for him, not because any lack of confidence in him. It's just because Chase Brown has been so great that they've built everything around him, and he's hardly come off the field at all. He's playing almost 100% of the snaps in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it sounds like that's going to be the case going forward. They like everything about him. From the pass pro is really improved, and what he can do in the receiving game, and he's running the ball really well, both wide and between the tackles, and so that he said that they're hopeful that they'll have him for Saturday. But when you look ahead to next year, Zach Moss will be back, but it looks like this is going to be the Chase Brown show going forward.
Maybe Zach Moss will be back.
Maybe he'll be back,
they very much have outs on his contract if they decide not to, but he would be a solid compliment. It's just a matter of what they want to pay for a solid compliment. When running Chase Brown out there a high percentage of the time is clearly the direction that they're going to go, seeing as what he's proven capable of doing. But that's plenty of off-season shows to go on that one. But yeah, I'm with you. And when we have those off-season shows breaking down all these decisions, that conversation will be pulled back in. Everything that we've been hearing lately about how bright his future is, how much he's going to be one of the best backs in the league, not just their back or someone they want on the field, one of the best backs in the league. They feel like they have a true top back in the league in Chase Brown, and his production has certainly backed that up. Yeah. I really, I was sort of, it's really a joke that I used to open up a question to Pitch of like, all right, we're going to yet again ask you to tell us why Joe Burrow is great. But, just trying to find some of this stuff that the average viewer doesn't appreciate or totally see that they see about what Burrow did in the game against Denver. And I just thought, he's like, look, there's so many different ways you can say this, but he said, I would just say that there's a rare ability to access things in the moment that maybe we talked about. Maybe it's something we emphasized that week. Maybe it's something we didn't even talk about. Maybe it's something we worked on in training camp. It's just he's got an uncanny ability to just think on his feet and then put into action thoughts that most of us, even if we had in the moment, we probably would not be able to get spit out with the urgency and the clarity that's necessary to then have your teammates go execute what you want them to execute. And Joe's able to do that. And I think that's a rare talent. And so it happened numerous times the other night. I'm sure it'll happen on Sunday. So it makes him the best at what he does. And for the millionth time, we're fortunate we got him. I think that's so true. And this is a big part of Burrow's game. It's the whole photographic memory thing with Joe and like how but that's where it plays itself out, is pulling out stuff like this, the speed option to Herbert. He just, and Charlie and I talked about this yesterday. I mean, he just pulls that out on the fly, and it was, Pitch was even talking about, look, that's not something that they just had. Maybe they walked through it once at one point, and now he's got to go tell Khalil Herbert, who's suddenly in the game, hey, we're going to run the speed option. I see this look. I'm going to find it. I'm going to get to it. And then I'm going to run. I'm Joe Burrow, and I'm going to go out here. I'm going to run a speed option like I'm the quarterback at Navy. And so and execute it. And it gets what, 13 yards?
13 yards.
And so you're talking, that's the type of stuff. And that was happening all the time. Charlie and I talked about the play of Yosef. You just see a quick hand signal that he accesses that's going to offset whatever he sees the blitz or thinks that's going to be. Last week, we talked about the cadence, to use the cadence to set up something so he can get the read and then access where in his brain he needs to go to find the adjustment for that. And he finds these things. And once it's gone over once, it's in the playbook, right? And that's what Pitcher was saying was, look, once he does it once, it's in there. And once it's in there, it can come out any time. And it does. And you see that happening a ton at the end of the year. And so I thought that was really interesting stuff from Pitch on that.
Yeah. And you would think it would play out better in this regard, but it relates to this week because you're playing a team for the second time, and the Bengals have not been great playing rematch games because they've struggled against the AFC North in general. But that is something you would hope that Joe can utilize this week against Pittsburgh. He just saw them a month ago, and there's going to be, and yeah, obviously teams change things up and throw in wrinkles and everything the second time around. But just having all of that from that game, a successful game offensively, having all of that banked, and you would think there's going to be stuff he can rely on in the moment against this team and pull something out for a key play at some point.
We shall see. One last thing. So the Bengals put in a claim on Fedarian Mathis, a defensive tackle who was a 2022 second-round pick of the Commanders. He was let go. Commanders are just like, look, if you weren't here before this, and if you're not on board with what we're doing, you can get out. And so they did that with Mathis, a high pick. The Jets end up selecting him. Bengals did put a claim on there. If it weren't for the Jets, they would have got him, but they don't. All this at the same time that Sheldon Rankins is officially put on reserve. He goes on the NFI, not injured reserve, the non-football illness. And so that's interesting. I don't know what that designation is going to mean. Anytime NFI comes up this time of year, the antennas go up. What does that mean? Because in the past, we have seen NFI be used. AJ McCarron is a good example. It ends up being a list that gets used and shows up in a grievance. It can be used to get out of paying guys in certain respects if something happens that's not associated with the football team. Have no idea on that. And I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that. There is in the past been times where an NFI list shows up this time of year and it ends up being part of a dispute over money, whatever. That could have nothing to do with this. He does have an illness that doesn't have to do with football. I mean, and so maybe it's just as simple as that. We'll see. The Sheldon Rankins thing, though, and I know everybody's had questions. I talked about Who They Like last week, and we tweeted about it yesterday as it kind of tied a bow on his time here, which this is going to be it. I mean, the Bengals will save $9.5 million against the cap and $2 million in dead money on his salary in 2025 if they let him go. And considering everything that happened with Sheldon this year and uncertainty over illness, the lack of production when he was playing, all of it, obviously, that's a no-brainer that's going to happen. They're going to clear that space and move on. What are the lessons, though? What are the lessons from the Sheldon Rankins situation? A free agent debacle. And I think that's there's a lot that you wonder, not just what the lessons are, but if they'll learn those lessons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess sometimes this stuff is predictable, but maybe when you have a player that's, 3 teams in 3 years, 4 teams in 5 years, and if he goes somewhere else next year, it'll be 5 teams in 6 years. If you have a guy that moves around like that, I know they try to vet him and talk to as many people as possible, but sometimes this stuff's unpredictable. But maybe you don't do that. You go with the guys coming off the rookie contract with the team that have only been with one team, and you target them. It kind of feels like the Cordy Glenn situation a little bit. But even that, Cordy was with one team, and the Bills were more than willing to give him up. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint a lesson you can learn unless it's that a guy that's bounced around with a lot of different teams over a short amount of time. Maybe you just shy away. Maybe there's things going on there that there's a reason that if he's good, that he's not sticking somewhere.
Here's my lesson. My lesson is pay the people you know best.
Yeah.
Give the money that you have, the proper value, to those that you know best, that work for you. Because, this, and yeah, everyone's sitting here saying T. Higgins, T. Higgins, T. Higgins, T. Higgins. And I think that's the basis of this conversation. That's where I wonder if the lesson will be applied. Because to me, I look at, you can go into free agency. And this franchise used to hate free agency for that reason. Draft, develop, retain. You have the best chance of getting the most value from paying the ones that are already in your building that you know the best. period. Full stop. That's why they don't do free agency yet. They went out and they had success in free agency. And, Trey Hendrickson, Mike Hilton, Chidobe Awuzie, all of these guys, they went out and found specifically the defensive side of the ball and just hit. And Trey Waynes was in there and he was a miss. Mm-hmm. That happened. But they hit at record levels. That's not sustainable. That's not the way things go. No team does that. No team has runs like the Bengals did when they hit all of those. Okay. It's so hard to do that. You succeed and you get value from your money on paying those that you definitely know the best. Because you just really, until you get someone in your building, you don't totally know. They could be Walter Payton Man of the Year, elsewhere, but something doesn't connect right. They don't like it, whatever. Coaching doesn't sit with them a certain way. It's a team game. There's a million people in the building. Everything's different. You never know. You never totally know. But when you know you got something that works for you, DJ Reader is the one that immediately shows up in this conversation, and it did yesterday. Because it's hard not to look back and be like, look, they basically paid him about the same amount of money in the same range, actually paid Rankins more than he ended up getting in Detroit. And you could have kept DJ Reader, and at least at the very least, even if you were getting a percentage of prime DJ, you knew his personality and you knew what he would mean to the locker room. And I stand by the fact that when they let DJ Reader walk, they carved out the soul of this defense. And that showed up big time behind the scenes this year because they didn't have the enforcer. They are a self-policing culture, player policing. Okay. They held each other accountable. That's where the best cultures come from. They set it up that way. Well, nobody more than DJ. And we've talked about this year, that you've seen this over and over and over again. That was a part of the problem as they went by. And so when we look back at that and say, well, you took that away, and then you brought in Sheldon, hoping, hey, look, he could be a better pass rusher. He's healthy. You've seen what he can be. He could be dynamic. He'd be a nice, draft guys around him, and it can all still work. Yeah, but you don't know that. You don't know the guy totally. You don't know how he's going to mesh. You don't know how it's going to work. And so to me, it's just always best to bet on what works as much as you can, because there's so much unknown in the NFL with every player that moves or changes scenery or anything, or just from year to year. If you know something works and you have it, you largely want to. And this is not me saying they definitely should have kept Reader. There were big questions there, and I understood it at the time, and I still do. Like, nobody knew with his injury what.
Yeah, he wasn't clear yet.
He wasn't clear. Nobody knew if he was going to come back and be a total shell of himself. And that was a tough spot to be. I think that was a really tough decision, and I totally understood moving on. And we've talked about this when we talk about Witt and Dax Hill with the Jesse Bates situation. It's never as much about moving on as it is when your plan to fix it fails. Mm-hmm. And the plan to fix it failed here, and that exposes it. And that's just it. You have to be betting on something that that you can count on, and it just doesn't. You don't always get that when you let it go out the door. You don't always get what you want when you let it go out the door. If you have the ability to get something that that you trust, I think there's a lesson there, and I wonder how much they learned about it and what that will mean for the way they approach free agency and the big three.
Yeah. So two things on Rankins. I mean, one is, we know how much this team values character and love of football and leadership and all that. And remember back his opening press conference? It was like one of the best opening press conferences that we've sat in. I mean, that guy's a salesman. He sold himself, yeah. and I'm sure he did the same thing in free agency. But your point about go with the guy you know best, the crazy thing is they do. That is their philosophy. It's just not across the board, because how many times have we heard Duke Tobin say, when you're talking about trading guys for picks, and he's like, a pick is just a draft pick. It's just a crapshoot. The player you have in the building who is a concrete, quantity, an asset. And so they've always kind of looked at that way of, we value guys we know in this building. And for whatever reason, maybe that was it. Maybe it was because Reader wasn't cleared yet. was getting crossing 30, didn't know how he was going to go, and it was just too big of a question mark for him. But I feel like that is their philosophy. It just wasn't in play in this one situation, and it will. It's something that they're gonna have to work through in future free agency periods. And you talked about all the hits they had in that run with Hendrickson and Hilton and all those guys, and they had no choice. I mean, they had to get this turned around. They had all this money to spend. They had no choice but to go out and do that, and they hit. It was great. But you're right, it's not sustainable. You're with the Burrow contract, with the Chase contract coming, they're not going to be able to do that every year. They're going to be limited again in free agency, like they chose to be before Burrow arrived. So it is puzzling though. It so much rolling, so much, not just cap space, but faith and reliance on someone to come in and be a leader. And I think maybe they thought bringing Von Bell back would kind of be that sheriff, to kind of be the self-policing leader, but it just didn't work out. And DJ Reed, watching him last night, I mean, that really bad penalty, but just watching him in that Monday night game and just thinking, man, if that guy was still here, how different would this defense look right now?
Yeah, and he, like, if I don't know, if you go by PFF grades or whatever, he's, he lived in the 80s and high 70s here, and he's down in the 60s this year, and he hasn't played a ton of snaps for Detroit. He's dealt with injury and he's been coming back and all that stuff, but he's still who he is. Like, he's still that guy, and he's the king of grit, right? I mean, and all of those things, and so they miss that, and there's no doubt about that. And with Sheldon. The other thing is this whole illness thing. Everybody wants to know, what's his illness? Is he like going with the hazmat suit and figure out what it is? And like, is he alive? Like all these jokes. I just, it's very hard to report on somebody's illness. Okay. Like that's not I don't view it as my job to tell you about someone's medical condition if they don't want you to know that. Okay. And so everyone's like, why don't you say, it's not this is in Sheldon's court. If he wants people to know, if he feels like he owes it to the fans or whatever, or the team, if they want to come out on that side as well and say publicly with him, hey, here's what this was, they don't have to do that. Him, his camp, his agent, whoever, they don't have to do that if they don't want anybody to know what he's going through. The injury reports are out there for stuff that is like obvious and about the game or whatever. It's gray area. It's gray area, and it's hard. And I just always think it's better with medical conditions to just stay away and just go with what they're calling it. And that's what they're calling it.
And it's not as though we didn't try. I mean, I reached out to Sheldon's agent and asked if he wanted to say anything, put a statement out there, explain to him all these comments and questions from the fan base, and people just want to know, is he going to be okay as a person, let alone as a football player? And he said he would check with Sheldon, and they opted not to say anything. And then last week, Ben Baby from ESPN went up to Sheldon, explained all the same stuff. Anything you want to say? Nope, I'm good. I don't want to say anything. And so they chose to keep this quiet, and you have to respect that. But it has been frustrating for everybody, for the fan base, for the team, that this has lingered on as long as it has.
But that's what it is. All right. On that note, last night on the broadcast, you heard Troy Aikman say, if I had an MVP vote, go to Joe Burrow. And that conversation has gone on all week, and it is not going to go away. It's an interesting topic. And that's why I felt like it was an interesting topic to bring in our good friend, Mo Egger. Thanks to everybody that is watching on the YouTube channel. My conversation with Mo about MVP and wasted seasons and all that stuff is up on the site. You can go watch that right now. It's over in the Growler Bits, if you will, section. So go check that out on the YouTube channel. And thank you to everybody that subscribes and watches us on YouTube. We appreciate that, and hope you're enjoying all the content there, including the rewatches. A very visual medium for you. We're here for you. All right. So let's get back to the flip side of it. All right. Much thanks to Mo for joining. And we sort of got tagged, Jay, on the end there with a little bit of a teaser into the obvious, one of the topics of the next week or two, depending on whenever we get into the finish of this season, and that is like, is this enough for Lou Anarumo? And I don't, there's a lot to unpack there, and that's a full episode or two worth. So I don't want to go fully into that right here, because that's, it's a one more data point left. We've kind of said a lot of what we already need to say on the topic. The decision of whether it's going to happen or not is the last thing left. But we did talk to him yesterday, and one thing that I thought stood out to me on that topic, Jay, was him pointing out, look, guys are playing with more confidence. Quote, guys are getting better. And I think there's truth to that. I mean, obviously, there's more plays happening. You're seeing confidence from this younger players. Said it all year, over and over and over again. This and what's turned into his fight for his job are going to be about the development of the young core. That's what they've got to be able to say. Can you build these guys? Can you build a defense around these guys with some help? Or do they need a new voice to lead them? And that's the question that's in their court. But him pointing out, guys are getting better. You're seeing the young players play better. Things are happening there. And I think there's some validity to that, but I think it's interesting to hear that as sort of the thrust of his message when it comes to the direction of the defense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it is. You're seeing it. You're seeing these young guys play better, and you're also still seeing some of the same problems. The deep ball to Mims, where he just runs right between the two safeties, but that's not coaching. I mean, the players know you have to stay on top of the route. It's just error, self-inflicted error there, and I do wonder. You mentioned one more data point. So if we're back in 2020, it's a 16-game season and it's over. Did he do enough? And I think you would say probably not, because there's been so much argument about degree of difficulty and the lack of quality offenses that they faced. Well, there were still some same issues against Denver, but it's a playoff possible team, a winning team. I don't know that would have been enough, but if they can go into Pittsburgh, and if they can not just win the game, but hold that offense down, and you go from 1 month giving up 44 and all the yards they did, and it looks totally different in a playoff type of environment. I think it would give the organization and Zach real pause about, do you want to move on? Is this going in the right direction? And I don't think it's fool's gold if that's the direction they decide to go. If it looks really good and this defense plays good and is one of the reasons they win the game Saturday night, I really do think you have to consider running it back with Lou and giving him not just these young guys that have started to develop this year, but you start getting some of those injured guys back that, Dax Hill was playing well when he got hurt. DJ Turner was playing well when he got hurt, and you add some draft picks, maybe a free agent or two, and you have some faith. I mean, it's he's been here long enough that I think there's belief in him, and that I think that there's a real chance, if this looks good Saturday night, that would be enough to run it back.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can hear it, due to what's happened over the end of this season, over the last month, you can hear it. Now, I don't know how much anybody agrees with that. I'm sorry, but all of these games against good teams this year are still pretty visceral, and I have a hard time with that, but you can hear it. Look, you're seeing progress. They won all these games. They're getting confidence. We're developing these guys, and who Lou is as a game planner. You know what he is. We just got done talking about comfort with the people you know. Are you going to bring in somebody that you don't know how you're going to work with at a position that important, like defensive coordinator? You can hear all that side, and you can see it. I mean, look, they think that they have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. They've thought that. Certainly over his time and what he did in 21 and 22 specifically. I don't know. I think you can hear that. I do think the clear data point of 44 versus Pittsburgh over a month ago, and then playing them in their building with everything theoretically on the line for yourself. makes it a chance to really get a good look at just where you're at in comparison to how much growth you've really seen. But I don't know. I don't know. I think this is maybe the hardest decision of Zach Taylor's time here, because it's so important. I mean, he gives that defense. That's head coach. That is head coach 2, defense head coach. He doesn't like to get too involved in it. He wants someone that can run their show over there. That's the setup, and it's so important. And so the idea of, for the first time, having to potentially part ways with that and start over anew, and you look at how bad the defense and it wasted what it wasted this season, theoretically, if they don't make the playoffs here. And here's the only line that I come with, and I'm going to be curious what the verbiage is. If missing the playoffs this year with the season that Joe Burrow has had is deemed unacceptable, right? Which I'm sure it will be. It should be. If it's not, then that's unacceptable. How about that? If it is, what is that? Are you just saying that word for the sake of saying that word? Because unacceptable means ramifications. Okay. Yeah. Then you didn't accept it. And the only thing you can do, and I'm not, Lord knows, anybody that knows me in this podcast, I am not Mr. Heads should roll. I hate fire everyone. I hate that it comes to that. But this season has been rare beyond belief, specifically from the failures of the defense to support what Burrow and Chase and company have done this year. And if that is deemed unacceptable, then I don't know how you go forward and run it back, or else you're just saying things. You're just saying a word, and that's tough. That's tough to handle in my opinion.
The funny thing might be not making the playoffs might be the best thing for Lou, because they could go out and pitch a shutout against Pittsburgh and they sneak into the playoffs and go to Buffalo and get their doors blown off by that offense and Josh Allen. That erases everything that just happened in these last 5 weeks. But you go out, you have a good game against Pittsburgh, didn't quite make it, but you showed the progress at the end. Then you've got that little bit of momentum that he can kind of carry into the discussions of whether he stays or not. But getting into the playoffs just exposes them again to some of the elite offenses in this league, and it could all go south again.
I just hate to think that, a couple of games at the end of this generally lost season, are the deciding factor. And I know that it's close and it's a tough decision, but just go watch a replay of the Baltimore games. Just go watch a replay of the first half in LA. No bigger game this year.
Yeah.
No bigger game. And they came out and laid a massive non-competitive egg with non-effort everywhere. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it in all those games. There's the core of your season. And we're gonna, why do some of these games matter and have a bigger impact? To me, this should be the drop in the bucket of what was already there. And I don't know. I had a very, very, very hard time getting past Pittsburgh 1, LA, and Baltimore, and both Baltimore games. I have a hard time getting past those and what we saw defensively from a unit that just unraveled, and had no answers. And that, to me, was why I felt like it was a wrap after Pittsburgh, because you can't come back from that. Maybe you can. Maybe he can, and they're certainly giving their best effort, and you can hear it. But I don't know. All right, let's move forward. That was enjoyable. Jay, you got some stats for me?
I do. So we've been talking about going into this game against Pittsburgh. If the Bengals figure out a way to win this game, they finish the year on a 5-game winning streak. So I was curious, how many teams that have finished the season on at least a 5-game winning streak made the playoffs? So there's been 105, and 96 of them have made the playoffs. 9 teams that finished the game on at least a 5-game winning streak that didn't that didn't make the playoffs. The most recent was the 2005 Dolphins. And so the next question then becomes, okay, kind of what we're talking about with Lou. You build some momentum at the end of the season, it carries into the next season, right? No. Those 2005 Dolphins that won 6 straight and still missed the playoffs, they went 6-10 the next year. Most recent team, 94 Giants, 6 straight, 5-11 the next year. You do have the 1991 49ers. They won 6 in a row at the end of the year. They come back in 92, go 14-2 and reach the NFC Championship game. So there is one in there, but generally a streak like this at the end of the season, the momentum stops when the season stops, and you're not going to carry that into the next season. The Steelers, on the other hand, if they lose this game, they finish the year on a 4-game losing streak and still get in the playoffs. In the Super Bowl era, only 2 other teams have done that. The 1986 Jets lost 5 in a row, got in the playoffs, and actually won their wild card game. And then they lost the next game to the Browns, 23-20. That's when the Browns went to the AFC Championship game and lost to Denver. The 1999 Lions lost 4 in a row, still made the playoffs, then lost in the wild card round to Washington. So Pittsburgh could be making some really rare history if the Bengals win this game Saturday.
You know, a comp that came to my mind as I was thinking about it and watching the Lions last night a little bit and just thinking about where they're at was the 2022 Lions. Now, at the time, I remember thinking the 2022 Lions were giving big like vibes about that young Bengals come up, because they were in the rebuild. It had been ugly in 21, but then they struggled early in that year. Let's see, they were 1-6, and they go on and they win 5 of their last 6, 8 of their last 10. Their offense caught fire, and their defense had kind of stabilized a little bit towards the end, but they were the team that was like no one wanted to see. They had a great offense that ended up being, I always look at the only way you can win the Super Bowl is if you're top 8 adjusted net yards per attempt. The Lions moved into that year. I remember thinking like, man, no one's going to want to see the Lions. They're one of these teams that could really make a run, that could really do it. And they got in, they beat Green Bay the last week of that season when Green Bay just needed to win to make the playoffs, 20-16. And it jump-started them into being the season opener against the Chiefs the next year. And we've seen who the Lions have become. I'm just saying, defense does tend to be volatile year to year a little bit, but you get runs like that. You could see a little bit of that being the kind of momentum that the Bengals could feel like they have, where this offense is the way it's supposed to look. You just go back and regret all the games from the beginning of the year, which is where they're at. But I kind of had that comp. I had one more from that, watching Kirby Joseph get another 2 more picks. I couldn't help it. Was like he has the most interceptions since he came into the league in 2022 or whatever, like 17 picks, whatever it is. Like, golly, safety, 3rd round safety. Man, they were searching for answers there in 2022. Who'd they take right before? Zach Carter, 2 picks before Kirby Joseph.
Yeah.
It's just, it just, 2 picks before. Could have had that guy. Instead, had to take Jordan Battle, right? The next year. And you end up in all of it. My goodness gracious. All right, what's next? We got to move on after that. Let's see. Jay, what's our contract incentive situation? We got last game of the season, always has some contract incentives that guys are trying to hit. What do we got?
Yeah, so actually, Mike Gesicki last week with his 10 catches gave him 57 for the year, and he got $125,000 for reaching 55. So that was a huge. It tied his career high, but it also paid off. He got another 125 when he hit 45 catches. So he's made due there. If he gets 3 yards Saturday, he's got another $125,000 coming for reaching 600 on the season. He already hit $125,000 incentive for getting to 500. And if he can somehow score 2 touchdowns to get to 4 for the year, another $125,000 in his pocket. So, yeah, it looked like a team-friendly deal, and it was. He's outplayed that contract, but he's also added some incentives, and the Bengals don't do a lot of incentives. So, he structured that the right way. He's cashed in. An interesting one, Cody Ford should be very thankful for Cordell Volson for backsliding this year. Cody earned an extra $600,000 for reaching 50% of the playing time this year. He's at 59% now, even if he doesn't play a snap on Saturday, he's getting that $600,000. So big payday for him for getting in there and not just playing when Orlando Brown was out, but then playing when Orlando came back and Mims and then they put Cody in there for Volson. Joe Burrow has incentives. They don't kick in until next year, and they are not stats related at all. They deal with an AFC Championship game win and a Super Bowl win, and he's got between $500,000 and $750,000 every year of his deal, as long as he plays 65% of the offensive snaps and plays 50% of the snaps in an AFC Championship win or a Super Bowl win. He's going to be hitting those $500,000, $750,000 incentives on top of an already massive contract.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a hard time being like, ooh, that's going to be huge for Joe.
Yeah, right.
Man, that's really going to change things. Yeah, I think he just wanted to throw him in there, be like, can I just have a little bit something on the line monetarily when if I win a Super Bowl? Yeah, please.
I mean, 1.3 million, that's nothing to sneeze at, but
nothing to sneeze at unless you already have 275.
Right.
It's about percentages. I feel like that should be something you'd be like, I would happily love to share this with the media that's been so good to me over my entire time here. If you guys can just put this into a renovated media room and snacks and good coffee for these guys. They need it. They deserve it. And gals. All right. Growler Bet recap, Jay. What's our Growler Bet recap?
So the Growler Bet last week was when Jamar would break TJ's franchise record for receptions in a season. He needed 5 to get to 113 to break TJ's 112. He did it on the first play of the fourth quarter. I guessed first play of the third quarter. A lot of people responded like, you hit it right on the nose. I nope, I was a quarter off. I went with the 15:00 mark in the third quarter. It was 15:00 of the fourth quarter. You had picked second quarter. You went 4:22 second quarter. So I finished ahead there. A lot of submissions, but we even gave you guys a 10-second buffer, 5 seconds on either side of the number, and nobody hit it. But our good friend of the program, Paul Malloy, was the closest of anyone. He said 12 seconds left in the third quarter. So technically, he came within 7 seconds of hitting it, but did not.
So close. Sorry, Paul. We love you, but you were so close. Shout out to Ryan Campbell also, who had 14-14 in the fourth quarter. Kind of close. Kind of close. Little bit. So appreciate you guys. A few submissions from the subject headers. Want to give a shout out. I wanted to shout out to the legend Ray White, of course, who had a great idea. Jay, you had to send him home happy, which proved correct last week. Send him home happy stat. Yet again, another addition to that. Was it 12-1 now in their last 13 home finales? Okay.
Yep.
He suggests calling it the happy ending stat. So he called it the happy ending Growler Bet. I feel like that's maybe something you should consider going with. It certainly fits with our crowd that guesses 69 to everything.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Tony Paolo has, I was expecting the Growler to be a little rockier than this. Always appreciate that. Dumb and Dumber references are just all over the place these days with the So You're Saying There's a Chance. That was showing up a bunch too. You can always win me over with a Lebowski. And so shout out to Matt Clarsey, who said Mike Brown's urban underachievers, as I was calling them underachieving a bunch of times last week. So shout out to you on that. I like this one from Logan Martin. He says, Superman, that Joe, crank that soldier boy, which I appreciate after the Superman talk that was happening last week from T. Higgins. So I was gonna change it myself. I think he should have gone with Crank That Growler Boy. Personally, I mean, but I didn't want to alter. I didn't want to take away his creative license. Superman, that Joe, Crank That Growler Boy, really felt like right. So
Yeah.
I'm not here to criticize, even though I just did. I appreciate you just going there and having the idea and putting it together. Shout out to you, Logan. All right, any Arby's, Jay?
Yeah, I had one that it kind of struck me at the end of the game last week. You know, we saw the clip of Orlando Brown walking off the field and being emotional and screaming, you know, I played on one effing leg, played on a broken leg, and um, went to talk to him in the locker room, and there was other media around. He had his little boy with him, and it
Yeah.
was just it was really cute, and it was the the attention. A lot of times when kids are in the locker room, the players will kind of talk over the kid and do their media thing, and Orlando didn't. His kid had his full attention, and his son interrupted a couple of the questions and the answers, and Orlando just gave him all the time that he needed. And the great thing is, you know, the Hard Knocks cameras are right there getting all of it. I mean,
Yeah.
Orlando's son may be starring on Hard Knocks this week, or you know, tonight when it comes out. But I thought that was really cool. And you know, Orlando, I'm sure he wanted to get out of there with his son, but he understood too. Big win, big moment for him coming back and playing well in that game. And he did a couple waves of interviews, and his son just kind of wrote it out and popped in every now and then with a question or two. But it was a cute moment, and it was one, as a father, you definitely appreciate.
Yeah, that was really cool. We talked a lot in this episode about who who you don't know, and free agency, and you never know for sure. They got that one right.
Yeah,
You know,
big time.
I mean, that dude is a warrior playing through
Mhm.
what he went out there and tried to play through for the team, and he's been, obviously his game has been much better this year than it was in the first year here, but he's about all the right stuff. He's a dude you build around. He's a captain, like, and they got that one right in
Yeah.
free agency. And I think he's a cornerstone guy for that reason. And he's been just everything that they could want. And you love that you've got him under contract for 2 more years, because I
Mhm.
think, you could see him being the left tackle for a team that could win the Super Bowl very
Yeah.
easily. He's been good. I mean, he's great with us, and that's selfish for us. Like, just selfishly, he's awesome with us. I think he maybe wants to have a career in the media, or just sees he enjoys the conversations with us.
Mhm.
But that's just beside the point. I think as a teammate and as a guy, everyone would go to war with Orlando, a guy that went out there and did what he did this year. Um, mine, one, I was personally we were had to do Zoom with Lou Anarumo and Dan Pitcher yesterday, and I just enjoyed all of us together, including Lou and Pitch, bemoaning how much we are just having nasty flashbacks and how much we hate Zooms. Taking me back to the 2020, 2021 season of awfulness in covering the team. But actually, mine was you, Jay. You're my Arby's.
Oh yeah,
You
why?
waking up and choosing violence yesterday, with the Chase Brown versus Joe Mixon, that comparison. You had to do it. It's just like you just had to go there and try, and it caught. Boomer Esiason weighed in on your tweet. I saw, it caught a firestorm. I'm like, man, you just woke up and you're like, yeah, let's go. Let's light it up. I'm going
It,
for it today. Light the internet on fire. And you did.
it was
It,
that was not my intention. I just
it
thought it was
always does. It always stokes the fire,
yeah.
because there's so many different opinions on that, and it's a divisive subject. We've talked about it ad nauseum here. I think Chase Brown has taken the Bengals offense to a level that Mixon was not going to take it to, and
Mhm.
Mixon did a great job taking Houston's offense to levels that they wanted it to go to, specifically earlier in the year. I can't comment on the inner workings on what's happened to them offensively over the last month or two, but he certainly was working well down there this year. It's okay for it to be both. That said, no one can have that kind of nuance on the internets, and they certainly didn't yesterday. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you for being the one putting gasoline on the flames.
I just thought it was interesting because, you know, Chase Brown is 10 yards away. I was like, well, where's Mixon? Is he? And their numbers are so similar, yardage wise, carries wise, even the explosive plays. Everything was much closer than what I thought it would be, because they've kind of gone in opposite paths, where Mixon started off on fire, and then that whole Texas offense has kind of petered out, and whereas Chase Brown kind of started kind of slow, and Zach Moss was getting more of the playing time and the carries, and then Chase Brown is now ascending and taking off. And I just, other than salary and maybe pass blocking grade from PFF, their numbers were really similar. And I thought it was interesting. I was not trying to turn it into what it ended up becoming, but I do appreciate the engagement.
Yeah.
Elon will pay me a little bit for that.
Well, you certainly got it. I just appreciate it. Woke up, chose violence. Great stuff. All right. We will keep it rolling this week, and everything leading up to the Bengals at the Steelers, 8:00. Another primetime road game. Just love it. 8:00 on Saturday night. And of course, walk out after that and all the things in between. And then we'll see where things stand after Sunday. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.